Hi, have you ever found yourself rushing with painting so much that it felt like running a race? Well, a race against time, a race against your paper drying too fast. Well, that's certainly what happened to me until I discovered that there is a way of painting slower, far more relaxed, and with better results. If that feels like you, then you're in the right place today. The answer's in this one tiny drop. I'm going to show you exactly what it is, how to use it, several examples, some might even inspire you, and what not to do, and that's important too. It's called Ox Gall. It's a wetting agent and reduces the tension of water and paper together and allows for easier wetting. So like the name implies, it originally came from the gallbladder of an ox. It's been used for hundreds of years, and luckily these days they make a synthetic version much better for all. I use this synthetic one from Art Basics, and I've had it for years. Core has a very good one too. So back to what it can do for you. 4 key things and one that really shocked me. Your water and paint will spread much more evenly on the paper, and this will allow your paper also to stay wetter for much longer. It extends the flow of paint in a single brushstroke, and that can be super handy if you're doing special detailed work. It can change the way cheaper papers behave, saving you even more money when it comes to practice paper. And last but not least, it buys you heaps of time. And I've got a super special thing towards the end of the video, and you'll see what I mean. Anyway, I'm going to be very precise as to how to use it, so you'll know exactly how to get started and make it right for you. So let's get going. To make it precise, I'm using exactly 125 milliliters of water, which is equal to 4 fluid ounces. So wherever you are, that's how much I'm using. And then only 1 single drop of Ox Gall. I'll be making comparisons between water only or 1 drop solution or a 5 drop solution, which is this one. Now this is really important. This stuff is so potent that for this exercise, I'll be using separate brushes, separate rinsing jars, separate paper towel, separate paint, everything separate because it's so easily contaminated. Here I have 3 pieces of paper cut from the same sheet of Meeden cold press paper. Now let's see what it does. I'm adding clear water only to my first piece of paper with a separate brush, and then adding some permanent alizarin and an indigo, and just allowing it to spread the way it wants to. I'm picking up a clean brush and now wetting my paper with the 1 drop solution of Ox Gall all over, making it nice and even, and then picking up the same paint. It's the same dilution of paint. It was all mixed in 1 container and then spread throughout the little plates. The paint glides on beautifully with no resistance, and somehow it even looks richer here. I'm now applying the 5 drop solution of Ox Gall and spreading it out evenly. But wait, you'll see that it has a slightly sudsy texture to it, like tiny little bubbles. I start applying the paint, and somehow everything goes backwards a little. It takes to the paper differently. And now watch as I add the last bit of permanent alizarin. It's kind of dry brushy, you could say. But you can also see that the whole texture on the paper, look at the color, it's starting to change dramatically. Look at our varied results. I'll allow this to dry now and we'll come back to it later. My examples are dry now, so let's have a look. The water one, the first one, it's fairly smooth, but it has a wispiness in the background. Can you see the wispiness? It's like a little breeze of a summer breeze. And then the 1-drop solution of Ox Gall has given us the most even spread of paint. But look at the third one. The third one has lost its color. It hasn't spread nicely and overall looks totally uninviting. In my next example, I'm painting 2 lines of paint, a blue one and a red one, each of course with their own brushes, and then applying a single line of water or solution between the 2 lines of paint. So for the first one, here is 1 brush stroke of water. Now using, of course, a new brush and my other paint, 2 rows of paint. I haven't added any Ox Gall to the paint. Everything that's happening is from the 1 single drop of Ox Gall in the water. And here we have the 5 drops in the water. Of course, the paint gets contaminated a little bit by the water, as you would expect. Now let's see how they've dried. As you can see, the water has pushed the pigment out. And in the second one, with the 1-drop solution, the paint has spread much more evenly. But now look at the third one. It's gone crazy. You would not have picked it. Now we're looking at extended flow of a brushstroke. The only way to be fair in this exercise is to have a completely new brush. Dip it into clean water, tap it on paper towel, then fully load my brush. Now I'm going to see how far this brush load will take me. Mind you, this is cold press paper. You may get a little bit further on hot press paper, but that's part of all the experimenting that you need to do. Using our 1-drop solution, it will already increase the flow, but I am adding 1 drop of Ox Gall directly into the paint and mix it in. It applies really smoothly and you can tell you'll be going for a while. This is really, really good. There are times when you want to be painting like this. You might want to paint a silhouette and make it completely smooth without any telltale lines. Well, this would be ideal. Now, because there's only a small amount of paint here, I'm going to add 2 drops. 1, 2. And I'll give this a mix. In hindsight, I could have used 5 drops just to see what would happen, but I don't know, I just didn't. So 2 drops is working really well as well. And it's something for you to consider just to test the amount of paint you have and if you're using 1 or 2 drops. But you'll soon find that any more than that is too much. This exercise just shows us that if you needed extra flow to your paint for some continuous lines that you didn't want to stop and start, adding a little bit, 1 drop of Ox Gall to your paint would make it flow a lot further. Now this is the one that knocked my socks off. I'm exploring what happens when we paint on cellulose paper that's not 100% cotton. So I'm going to take 2 of these papers out of this pad. It's acid-free, 300 GSM, but it's not cotton. This one will be water only. This one will be a 1-drop solution. And we'll try it 2 ways. Going to use 2 different colors. Why not? I have a little bit of pyrrole orange here and a little French ultramarine. 2 palettes of paint because one will be for the water and one will be for the Ox Gall. Ox Gall, one droplet in the water. So let's paint something. For the top one, I'm going to paint water over the section to see how it takes. I am getting rid of any pools, so I'm just brushing over it again to make sure that the paint is even. All right, now I can pick up a little bit of paint, some orange and some blue. I'm really keen to see what happens when we use the Ox Gall solution. The thing I notice straight away is that the water just beautifully glides onto the paper. So I'm just drying my brush out and just smoothing this out. And now for a little bit of the orange. This stopped me in my tracks. A little bit of the blue. So check out this phenomena. On water only on the cellulose paper, the paint and water are really spreading very well, quite uncontrollably, whereas using 1 drop of Ox Gall solution really restricts the spread somehow. So, very interesting. Is it actually possible for cellulose paper to be used, at least for practice? So I'll try something else. How about a sequence of shapes and just paint them all stuck together and see what happens? This is on the Ox Gall side. Just a reminder that the Ox Gall is only in the small jar, the solution. The larger jar of rinsing water, there's no Ox Gall in it, so I'm often just washing my brush, but the Ox Gall is still in there. It is so potent that it will contaminate very, very quickly. Using my paint no different to the way I used it on the right-hand side, I'm finding that the effect is far more uncontrollable or unpredictable. But we'll have to allow this to dry and just wait and see. The paper's dry and I'm comparing the results. Over on the water only side, every border is different to every other border. So it's fair to say that it is very unpredictable. Over on the Ox Gall side, well, there are more similarities in some of the borders. And I know that the paper did take to the water and paint in a much more absorbent way, so it felt better. So, shock, horror, or jackpot? You tell me. You can easily use cellulose paper for practice with a drop of Ox Gall in your water, and it just behaves so much better. This is wonderful news. And do you remember the drop of water that we laid on at the end? This one has created a bit of a bloom. The blue one on this side, the blue, there's no mark, and the orange here has the tiniest little mark around the wet circle that eventually dried. So you have to admit it is very interesting indeed. Now remember how I promised you time in a bottle? Well, here it is. Imagine painting and not rushing. Imagine just taking your time, doing squiggles, testing out paints, maybe even repainting something that you've already started, all within the same session. and just having fun. Because why is it that we find it so hard to stop? It's simply because we just love pressing our brush against the paper, seeing what it does. And that makes painting so much fun. So I've put a timer on this little exercise here, and you'll see by the end of the 25 minutes, which by the way, I have sped up, and notice the clock up in the corner. Well, if it jumps, then I've cut that bit out, but the clock is still correct. And the only reason I would have cut it out is I was just idle. I wasn't doing anything. So I painted for 25 minutes and the paper was still shiny wet at the end. So I could have gone probably for an hour, all with 1 drop of Ox Gall in my 125 ml of water. And that's all I used. I didn't put any extra into the paint. The paint was, of course, contaminated by the water. And I had no plan. I didn't plan it from the start or the finish or anything. I just had fun. Just before I turn on the music, let's summarize what we've learned today. We've learned that using a very, very small amount of Ox Gall, let's say 1 drop in 125 ml of water or 4 fluid ounces, will give you a beautiful result. The paint, the water and paint will spread much more evenly on the paper and your paper will be wetter for much longer. We've also learned what not to do by adding more than 2 or 3 drops of Ox Gall to your water. Depends on how much water you have, but within that ratio, the Ox Gall will bleach out the color of the paint, change the texture, and perform radical textures and effects that perhaps you might like, in which case that's the way to go and that's what you have to do. But if you don't want those radical textures, then you know not to do it. It extends the flow of paint in a single brushstroke, and it could just go on and on and on. And what about changing the way that cheap paper behaves? This could save you a ton. And let alone just absolutely loving and relaxing your passion of art by having some music in the background and just enjoying it. And you know what? It's not going to be a mess or anything at the end. It's not even going to be muddy or anything. It'll just be beautiful. You know, I've actually spent quite a bit of time on this Ox Gall and performed many experiments, which I'll reveal over at school. If you'd like to come and check us out, your first 7 days are on me. So don't be shy. The doors are always open. And if you'd like to see how blending medium behaves, well, check out this video up here. I've really enjoyed this. Why don't you give it a go? Thanks for watching and see you next time.